Now for global business updates, Bosin Omofaye joins us. Good morning, Bosin.
Good morning. Thanks for bringing me to the breakfast table.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. B.
I love that. Good morning.
If you want to be a billionaire,
Think
must
like a billionaire. Let's call a friend.
Oh, yeah. No, I like 50-50 to keep my options open.
50, I love that. You're a
I
trader.
can't trust a friend.
You can. I love that.
Because when you phone a friend and you talk money, they can derail you. Don't trust anybody, even your friend with
Thinking like
money.
a billionaire.
Thinking like a billionaire.
You keep your options open, 50-50.
You are there already.
But don't go with the audience either.
No, I'm going with Dr. Abati and Ayo. Brent oil prices. I'm trying to always start from the barrel of oil because it's a lot there. Oil prices drifted lower in Asia trade on Tuesday as investors assess risk of supply disruption after Iran conducted naval drills near the Strait of Hormuz, right ahead of nuclear talks with the U.S. later in the day. Brent crude futures were down about 0.63% at $68.22 a barrel by 06:15 GMT, following a 1.3% gain on Monday. The U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was at 63.37 a barrel. That's up about 0.75%. But the move included all of Monday's price action as the contract did not have settlement that day due to the U.S. President's Day holiday, and that was on Monday. Now, Cuba is facing another severe energy crisis with power cuts affecting more than half of the country during peak hours, according to the state electricity company Union Electrica. In Havana, streets have gone dark, forcing families to rely on rechargeable lamps and shared charging schedules. Residents say daily life has been heavily disrupted, with children struggling to sleep due to the heat and schools affected by exhaustion. The crisis has worsened following new trade measures announced by Donald Trump, allowing the U.S. to impose extra tariffs on countries supplying oil to Cuba. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel has accused the U.S. of cutting off vital energy supplies, saying the country has received no foreign oil since late 2025, as blackouts are expected to intensify in the coming days. In the meantime, President Donald Trump has described Cuba as a failed nation, quote unquote, and urges leaders to strike a deal with the United States, saying the crisis on the island has become a humanitarian threat. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, President Trump said Cuba's deepening fuel shortages and widespread blackouts highlight the urgent need for an agreement with Washington. He dismissed the idea of a U.S.-led regime change, saying that it could be avoided if Havana negotiates. And back on Market Street, Asian financial markets were trading carefully early Tuesday in holiday-themed trading, but oil pushed higher with U.S. and Iran nuclear negotiations in Geneva due to begin later in the day. The mainland Chinese, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, and South Korean markets were closed on Tuesday for Lunar New Year holidays. U.S. markets were shut on Monday for President's Day. Japan's Nikkei 225 was down 0.7% in Asia. In Australia, the S&P ASX 200 was trading almost 0.25% higher. India's Nifty 50 was up about 0.2%. Australia's central bank concluded inflation would have stayed stubbornly high if it had not hiked interest rates as it did this month, and was not yet sure if further tightening will be necessary. Minutes of the Reserve Bank of Australia's board meeting released on Tuesday showed members were worried that the risks to its inflation and employment mandate had shifted materially, making the case to hike the stronger one. Now, the Bank of Japan Governor Kazuo Ueda and Prime Minister Senator Takashi held their first bilateral meeting on Monday since the ruling party's landslide election victory, which could have served as a venue to discuss the central bank's rate hike plans. The meeting came amid simmering market speculation that the rising cost of living, driven in part by the weak yen, could prompt the central bank to raise interest rates as soon as March or April. After the meeting, Ueda said that the two had a general exchange of views on economic and financial developments. He said the Prime Minister did not make any specific monetary policy requests. And finally, here at home, Nigeria's inflation rate eased slightly in January, signaling a gradual cooling of price pressures. Headline inflation stood at 15.10%, down from 15.15 in December last month. On a month-on-month basis, prices declined by 2.88% compared to 0.54% increase recorded in December 2025, meaning the average price level fell during the month under review. Food inflation showed a more noticeable improvement. Year on year, it dropped to 8.89%. That was a sharp decline from 29.63% in January, that's last 2025. A further breakdown shows urban and rural areas recorded lower inflation compared to a year ago, 15.36 and 14.44%. Back to the team. Good morning. Back to you again.
All right.
Morning.
Yeah, great one. Inflation numbers keep coming down.
15.
15, yeah, I mean, it keeps coming down. But for me, like I always will insist, go to the markets out there, Bosun. The numbers are not great at the markets. So when you see inflation numbers, when they say food inflation is about 8.9%, that is it's a 14-year low. I'm like, oh, kick me in the face. It's unbelievable. It's not true. It's not true. The markets do not say something like this. What is simply happening is that we use a base year that was the highest peak of inflation. That was the 30s. And that was 2024. And when you use that, when you benchmark against anything, every other thing drops. It's not a true reflection of what is happening. We've had a lot of analysts. We had Tilewa Adebayo come here to talk about. In fact, Tilewa have said, by his own estimation, inflation will be about 20-something%. Because where you would know is this. Go and look at the interest rates. Inflation 15%. Interest rate 27%.
At the central bank. At the bank, you're doing 32, 35.
When you get to the bank, it's over 30-something%.
Yes.
And at the same time, with all the conversation about the reforms, we are not still getting the foreign direct investment. What we are getting the FPIs. Recently, they said we had a 380% high of capital importation, rose about 6.something billion. Go and check the capital importation numbers. A sizable portion, over 50% of them went to the banking sector.
Money markets.
These are money markets. These are FPIs. What we need are FDIs like what the Enugu state governor got. $20 million, something good. At least we can start from there. That's what we're talking about. That's why we're not moving the needle.
All right. So like you already cited, what we'll be looking at is what is the implication of these January numbers. One is that there's a debate around whether now the CBN would reduce interest rates, and then that would, of course, be reflected in the banks. We talked about... So, but the taste of the pudding is in eating. So if you're talking about inflation numbers going down, then it should also be reflected in rates. Unfortunately, it hasn't yet reflected. Also, for the for the average Nigerian, what this means, because people might look at it, oh, you're talking about the numbers coming down, but the price, I bought yam for X amount of money, the price hasn't come down. It's Ramadan season. We know how the numbers go up. But I think it's important to state, as we often define, that inflation is the rate at which prices increase. So it means that if prices are increasing, it's lower in terms of that increase. So you will not see an immediate impact in your gari, yam, beans, and all that.
Your cup of tea just next to you.
Yeah.
Why are you holding it?
So
what's your teacup inflation?
Don't go there,
So just to mention that for people that long term we should begin to see, the impact in the in consumer markets in terms of food inflation.
Productivity.
Yes, absolutely. But some of the things, I'll just land here. Some of the things that have been said to be responsible for these numbers. Number one is if we look at the the naira to the dollar, it has strengthened in recent times. If you also look at the introduction of the Dangote refinery as well, cost of fuel, it's been going yo-yo up and down, but that also has an impact in transportation of goods, food across different parts of Nigeria. So some of those things could be said to be, and of course, the rebasing of the economy.
The energy cost remains stubborn, however. You got a piece of yam, if the price is low, I'm not sure electricity cost has gone down.
Yeah.
So you got to eat it somehow.
Yeah.
I discussed the inflation figures. The CPI expected with Dr. Ayo Teriba on Sunday. And his main argument is that, it is to be assumed that once the naira appreciates, inflation will go down. But the key point here is the fact that Nigerians have not seen the effect in terms of the cost of living generally, not just food inflation. But the economists have been telling us for more than 6 months that it takes time. But when will that time come? Because you can only measure reduction in terms of how there is an improvement in the cost of living of the people. That's a paradox there. Now, in the US, the stock market, the Wall Street, is in what is called disruption hysteria. S&P 500 has been dropping consistently. Dow Jones and Nasdaq Composite, the tech-heavy component of it, has dropped consistently for about 4 weeks.
The fear of the AI.
Yes, so there's a squeeze in that market. But we're used to the elevator behavior of Wall Street. This week, you are going to have on Friday the personal consumption expenditure data, which is what is used, relied upon heavily by Federal Reserve. We're going to have Federal Reserve reports on Wednesday. So all of these will determine what will happen. The Takaishi trade that we talked about has gone down now in Japan. And the pressure is now on Prime Minister Takaishi to now see how she can provide more stimulus for that economy. That is the situation in Japan. They are meeting in March. BOJ will meet in March.